Thank you for waiting for Violet UK. Yoshiki's been working very, very hard. I have heard the songs, and I promise you will not be disappointed.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of the s.k.i.n podcast. Would you believe it's been now 1 year since I did the first episode? In 1 year, that's been obviously 9 episodes, 13 uploads now, because obviously some of the episodes have more than one part to it, which averages out at 1 episode a month, which was the plan from the beginning. As always, I'd like to thank you guys for listening. You guys are the reason that I keep doing it. And I'd also like to take this chance, being the 1 year anniversary, to thank the people that have come on and contributed to the podcast, being Jeremy, Azuka, Yanoadila, and Jan. You guys have been absolutely awesome, and I couldn't have done it without you guys coming on the show and helping us out. Thank you. I'll be uploading for the first time this month on YouTube, just to test the waters, see if we get some new audience listening to the podcast. For those of you listening for the first time, you can download at SoundCloud and at Spreaker. Look for the details on YouTube for the links to that. And as always, don't forget to check out the s.k.i.n podcast Facebook page. I'm always updating and uploading new stuff for the podcast and some interesting stuff to do with s.k.i.n, so keep checking that out, and don't forget to leave a comment and keep contributing. Well, it's finally out. It was at least a couple of weeks after the initial release date was supposed to be. And for most of us, probably a couple of years after a single should have been released. So 6th November, across the world, the Born to Be Free single was released and debuted at number 1 on the Japanese iTunes charts, as well as number 1 on the rock iTunes charts in 5 other different countries. And plus, it went top 10 in a bunch of other countries as well. It was a really great effort, probably, the best that s.k.i.n could have hoped for. With this kind of situation and seeing that hasn't been a lot of marketing at all. s.k.i.n releases these days usually debut quite high in the Japanese charts and drop down very quickly, but this is 2 weeks to the day as I'm recording this since the single has been released, and it's still at number 14 on the Japanese iTunes charts. Well, the reaction to the song from the non-Japanese fans has been quite varied. Many of the hardcore fans haven't been a fan of the song since the beginning, and I must admit that I was one of them. I did, however, change my mind when I heard the song performed live in Bangkok in 2011. And look, this fully Finnish version has reaffirmed that for me. The real drums has made a massive difference in the Finnish version of the song, and the production of it is really, really great. I think personally that even though Jade is probably a better song, I think the production on Born to Be Free is actually better. But in the end, was it the best choice for the next single after Jade, after a couple of years without releasing anything? No, I don't think so, to be honest. There's other songs that would have been a much better choice. So 2 weeks after the single was released, a video has appeared on Kerrang at this stage, which appears to be the Born to Be Free video, which is a lot of fans talking about how much they love X, along with a lot of live footage from the world tours, earlier on. I'm not going to make a judgment on it yet, besides the fact I'm a little disappointed they didn't use the footage that they recorded back in 2010 at the Nokia Theatre, and we won't get to see Putter's Golden Pants. Well, I guess this is a great segue into the latest Explosion Online poll. This month, or last month should I say, the poll was, will you buy s.k.i.n's new single Born to Be Free? So there were 4 choices in this poll. One was, yes, I'll buy the physical release. Yes, I'll buy the download version, no, I'll wait for the album, and no, I won't buy it. Now, number one easily was, yes, I'll buy the physical release. Now, when the poll came up online, no one was 100% sure if there was going to be a physical CD release or not. I voted for buying a physical release, but it ends up there was no physical release, and it probably never will be. But anyway, 49% of the voters voted that they would buy the physical release, which is to be expected, even though it doesn't exist. At number two, 27% of the voters said that they would buy the digital release, the downloadable version, again to be expected. At number 3 and 4 was interesting because it doesn't look like a lot of people voted for no, I'll wait for the album, and no, I won't buy the single. But together they cropped up 23% of the vote, which is almost 25% of ex-Japan fans saying that they're not going to buy the new ex-Japan single. Very interesting. Maybe the band should start looking at doing some more physical releases. So just quickly before we get into the interview, I'll give you a heads up on what I'll be doing for next month's episode. As everybody knows, the end of this month, beginning of next month, ex-Japan are starting their first Japanese tour for nearly 20 years. So next month's episode, we'll be going through and talking about the entire Japanese tour. We'll be going through the set list, the show itself, what the performances were like. We're going to absolutely break down the show into minute little pieces and discuss everything about it. So I hope you guys can join us for next episode. Okay, let's get on with the interview. This is an absolute cracker. I hope you guys love this interview. This was amazing to be able to talk to this person, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear it as well. So, have you guys ever wanted to sit down and basically pick the brain of someone who has worked with Yoshiki for over 10 years, day in and day out? Well, I always have, and I found this person. Dokk Knight started working with X and Yoshiki towards the end of the Dahlia album recording. After the band split up, Dokk became the chief engineer at Ecstasy Recording and Ecstasy Studios, and was working on Violet UK with Y for over 10 years. Now, we all know Violet UK. Unfortunately, we don't know too many really, in-depth details about the project. Well, if you listen for the next 60 minutes or so, you're going to find out lots that you didn't know, some stuff that reaffirms information that we already knew, and answers to some questions that we never thought we'd find out. This is Dokk Knight.
Could you tell us about how you started off in the recording industry as an engineer?
Well, I started off managing bands back in college and on the East Coast, and ran into a bunch of problems with guys in the studios who told me I could and couldn't do certain things, and it was real kind of I didn't really believe them. So some of these bands did pretty well, and so I said to myself, I'm going to go out to California and just learn the right way to do this. So I basically moved out there, spent about 6 months getting acclimated in LA, and then I went to Recording Institute of Technology right in downtown Hollywood, and did a lot of recording in-house, brought a couple of my bands that I managed out there to do some recordings for in their studio, and then one of the instructors there basically liked what I was doing, and so he recommended me to a lady in 10 that was running a studio called One-on-One Recording, and she was a manager there, and so they hired me as a runner. So I basically started off as a runner, and just going to get food and doing all sorts of stuff, and then learning the rooms and that kind of thing. And then I got my first assistant engineering gig on, I think it was Joan Jett. Yeah, it was Joan Jett, way back, and this is like early 90s. And then and worked on that stuff. I got tossed in the room. Ted Templeman was the producer at that. He did a bunch of those Van Halen albums, and Ted really liked me, and so I did a couple more things with him. I did some Bette Midler and did some other things, and then At that time, the studio I was working at was owned by Yoshiki at that point. So Yoshiki was working in another room mostly, and I was running this other room. And his assistant engineer, a guy named Tal Miller, kind of went independent, and he wanted somebody else to come in there and help out. So I would go in and I started out comping vocals with him. So basically I'd run a vocal switcher. And then basically we'd listen to different combinations of tracks, and you should go comp it into a vocal track. And I did that for the very last part of the Dahlia album. And then from there, we kind of dove into Violet UK. I went on the Dahlia tour with him, spent some time in Japan with him there. I actually met my wife while I was there, and then from there I went to. He kind of picked me to be kind of the main engineer guy for the Violet UK project. So I worked on that for, God, I bet you 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And then, and then in between that, we would do I think we did the last song. We did, some Darren Gray, and we did Glay and some other bands, and did a bunch of stuff for his own record label. And then a lot of that I assistant engineered on. Towards the end, I started engineering him, and then kind of went from there. And then at a certain point, I just got burnt out. I basically collapsed, woke up, and just was exhausted. And I realized that, I had a wife and kids by that time. And I realized if I kept going like this, I'd probably end up dead. So as much as I loved working for him, I couldn't keep up with him. Yeah.
So he actually does work that long in the studio. He does his 24-hour stints and things like that. Is that true?
Oh, way more than that. I mean, I think the most I ever worked with him was 125 straight hours.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. So,
with no breaks, just in the studio.
No breaks. I mean, he would go in and take a nap in his office, and he'd have us doing stuff while he's doing that. He might let us take a break for an hour to close our eyes for a little bit, but no. I mean, that kind of he always would push it to the last second on his stuff, his deadlines. I mean, I remember. Hell, I think there was a movie, In God's Hands, where we did a song for Violet UK. I think it was called s.k.i.n, and we basically took and we delivered that song. I think we put it was supposed to be in the studio for mixing at, I think, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I think at 9 o'clock in the morning, we were on our way to the airport to fly it to San Francisco. So, we pushed it until the last minute on everything. Mm-hmm. So that's what ended up happening. He just, he's a perfectionist. So, he will take every minute that you give him to make it better. And what makes him a great artist is the fact that, a lot of guys will will spend, get it to that 80% mark, but, he'll take it past that and try to get it all the way to, to a perfect piece. And that last 20%, it takes up 80% of your time.
Yeah, for sure. Is that almost obsessive compulsive, or is it just perfectionism?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I mean, he is a little obsessive compulsive, but I don't think so much that. I think a combination of things. One is he's just really driven, and two, he's got perfect pitch, so he hears all the mistakes. And being a drummer, your timing's usually really good, so you start hearing the mistakes there. So I think it kind of drives him crazy a little bit.
Yeah, I heard an interview you did on YouTube saying that he could drop a pen on the floor and hear the actual note that pen would be making.
Oh yeah. We used to mess around with him all the time. We'd sit there, we'd take a spoon or something and bang it on a piece of metal, and then he'd play that note on the keyboard. Just messing around. Super nice guy. I mean, you think he's a super nice guy, but he was, if things didn't go the way he wanted, he would let you know. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've seen some footage like that as well.
Yeah, there's that. I've seen the video online where he's actually yelling at a guy named Dan Trollinger. Yeah, because he's trying to. I think he's editing MIDI or something in that video. He was actually in another room. I was actually in the other room while he was in there because he'd go back and forth between rooms.
Nice.
So yeah.
Can we go back to the Dahlia recording? So you came in towards the end of the recording, and I know that you're involved with Forever Love, and I think there was one other on that album as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I would have to look it up, to be honest with you. But yeah, I was right at the end there. I was involved in the mixing sessions over at, I think it was Record One, and then some of the vocal comping and stuff at our studio, which was 1-on-1 at the time, and then became Ecstasy. So yeah, I was involved at the end of that. I worked with a guy by the name of Rich Breen and Mike Ging on those. And Rich is a phenomenal engineer, and same with Mike. Mike did a lot of those Tears for Fears albums back in the 80s, and Tina Turner was a big thing of his. And then, he did some work for Michael Jackson after he stopped working for Yoshiki. He actually came back and took over the Violet UK project after I left for a little while until they could find somebody to work it, because Mike and I had worked together for years. He and I did a lot of the live stuff in Japan, and I think there was a double album that was live that we did, and then there was I think Last Song too. I think Mike did that as well.
With those those live albums, we're talking Live 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 was the main one, and Live 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 2. Were you guys actually at Tokyo Dome recording this, or is it mostly post-production, or?
No, I was backstage in the truck with Mike Gang on the Tokyo Dome recording that stuff, some of that stuff. And I think, actually we were having a good time. We had a couple models in the truck with us, and we were sitting there recording. We had a good time. So it was like, but the funny thing is, you sit in these trucks, and that stadium is so full of crazy Japanese that basically the whole time you're in the truck, the truck is rocking back and forth. So it's like you're sitting in a mini earthquake in one of those things.
That's going to be crazy.
Yeah, we were there for a month before the show and a month and like about a week after the show, basically doing pre-production and doing intros and laying out tracks, segues and stuff like that. So,
if you don't mind me asking, how much were these recordings touched up in the studio? Obviously, there's going to be errors and mistakes played on stage. Yeah, well, what we did is we would comp between nights. So, the shows were the same each night. So, he'd do 3 or 4 nights at the Tokyo Dome. So it was easy for us to basically, grab something from, the previous night if it didn't work on that. So we'd comp between that a little bit. I think he tried to keep it as live as he could. We did do some overdubs on certain things, but not a ton. It wasn't like, we replaced everything. So it wasn't like Kiss Alive or anything like that?
No. Although if you gave him enough time, he probably would. So,
yeah, for sure.
But no, he did. Those guys, Hide and Pata, and those guys are all really good musicians. So, they didn't have a lot of stuff to fix, to be honest with you.
Talking of those guys, at the end of the Dahlia recording, how much was the rest of the band actually involved in the production of that? Because they are, credited as being co-producers. They did. Each of them had their own songs that they worked on. I was right in the very end, so I didn't see a ton. But when they were laying guitar tracks, Hide and Pata were in there doing it, and they were producing what they wanted. And Yoshiki would go through in the very end and check it and make sure it's what he wanted overall. But those guys had a lot of input on that stuff. I think the overall direction and stuff was mostly Yoshiki. We used to refer to him as the man, so maybe if you hear me say the man, that's who I'm referring to.
Nice. So fast forward a little bit, we're going towards the end of X Japan. You were around when the band broke up, I presume?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, what was the mood, around the studio when that happened?
Well, I think, I kind of knew what was happening, so it wasn't that big a deal. And it wasn't that he was breaking up; they were breaking up. It was more of he was going off to do another project, And I don't think he ever viewed X Japan as being broken up as like, we're never going to be back together. It was more of like, I'm going to explore some different, musical avenues. Basically, I think that's what was kind of his direction with that. I don't think it was like, oh, I don't get along with any of these guys or any of that stuff. I think it was more so that, hey, I want to pursue this with the Violet UK project, and this is something I've wanted to do, and I've done enough X Japan, and let's see if I can do this.
Okay, the last song. I've got the single of the last song in my hand right now. There's there's no details about the recording of the song whatsoever. Could you shed some light on that? Was the band in the studio at the same time? Was the tracks flown in? It was Toshi recording at one-on-one? What was the deal with the last song?
Yeah, we did. I think the vocals there. I think a lot. I mean, I know. God, I'm assuming there's strings on that. I haven't listened to that song in 10, 15 years probably. So yeah. So I'm assuming there's strings on that. I think we probably did some string sessions there at the studio as well. I did so many string sessions with him that they're all mixed and mashed together. But I know that a lot of guitar tracks. I don't know when the sequence was for when the last song came out, if Hide was still there or not at that point.
Yeah, he was.
He was? Okay, all right. Then if he was, then then I know which song it is then. It basically, he would send in hard drives with guitar tracks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But Toshi was at one-on-one recording the vocals.
Yes.
Man, that would have been really hard because, there was a bit of animosity between Toshi and Yoshiki at that stage. And I don't know, I'm not sure how much Japanese you speak, but the song is probably the most honest lyrics that Yoshiki has ever written.
Yeah, I'd say so. I also think there's some Violet UK stuff that probably is a little bit more, real honest, I guess I would say the word. The funny thing is there's so many songs that he did for Violet UK that you guys probably have never heard. It'll be interesting to see what happens if he ever goes back to that and finally releases it. But it's just, some of that stuff is still just way, way out there as far as innovation goes. But yeah, as far as the Toshi thing goes in him, yeah, I think there was. I don't think there was an animosity between the two of them. There was stuff going on in Toshi's life, I think that Yoshiki was trying to help him with, and I'm not sure if Toshi responded. It wasn't that they actually disliked each other or anything. I think it was just Yoshiki was just trying to help him.
Okay, well, let's talk about Violet UK. Again, there's so much undocumented about it, and you're probably the man that knows the most, I would say. So was Yoshiki working on Violet UK stuff before X Japan broke up?
We had done some ideas and stuff. We really dove into it after they broke up. That's kind of when we really dove into it. He was doing the record company too at the same time. we spent all our time basically doing Violet UK, and the only time we didn't do Violet UK is when we were asked to produce a song for one of the artists he signed, or one of the artists who asked him, and a Japanese artist or a TV show or something like that. But 80% of the time for that probably 10-year period was Violet UK.
Cool. So there was that after X Japan, that was his absolute priority. It was Violet UK. He wasn't thinking of starting any other bands or getting X back together or anything like that?
No, he was driven towards this solo project, man. It was supposed to be kind of like this, visual combination of music, meets art, meets fashion, type thing. And, he wanted to kind of, do a show that involved all those things and have actually people that were involved in those different areas part of the band. So it would be like, you would have, designers and stuff be part of Violet UK, that kind of thing. We did a lot of auditioning for singers. One of the singers that we tracked a lot of vocals with was Nicole Schlesinger, I think's her name. She's the lead singer for Pussycat Dolls.
Pussycat Dolls. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I made the demo. She took the recordings we did with Yoshiki and used that as a demo to get that gig.
Nice.
I put her demo together for her. And then there were a couple other girls that sang on it. We auditioned a ton of girls, and I think he continued doing it after I was gone as well. But I think he got back into the X Japan thing I think within a couple of years of me leaving, and I don't think he ever released a Violet UK album. I don't know, but I don't think he did. I'll be honest, that kind of hurt my career a little bit, just because how do you tell somebody, I worked on all this stuff for, 8-10 years and there's nothing released of it, you know what I mean?
I wanted to ask you that, is it frustrating that, you dedicated so much of your life as well on this project, and it looks like we may never get to hear any of the material?
Oh, I'm sure we'll release it someday. I'm sure he will. There were so many cool people that we had involved in that project. I can't imagine that. At some point it won't be released. Now the question is, will Yoshiki do it, or will it be something that'll happen way later? But it's. I know. Oh God, I bet you there were 50, 60 songs that we were working on over that period of time. Some of them you heard, some of them you didn't. Some of them were on movie tracks. Some of them you heard a little bit of them in those 7-Eleven commercials. There's a lot of hints of them in different places, but a lot of it was just us, making the songs and putting all the stuff together, and then we were going to go back and track all the real stuff. I think we had one of the singers for I think the female singer for Massive Attack, and a couple other people. There was a guitar player from I can't remember the name of the band, but they were on Interscope. Fred Durst's band.
That was Wes Borland.
Yeah, Wes.
Yeah.
Well, he came in and laid guitar tracks for us on some songs. They're just amazing. He's got hard drives with this stuff, just really cool tracks that are laid and stuff. So it's just, I hope someday it comes out, because I'd love to, I hope someday, I'll be 50, 60 years old and I'll start getting calls from somebody saying, hey man, can you do my album? Because some of the techniques and tricks we created and did were, things that people still haven't done today. I know there's stuff that we've done that people aren't even doing yet. Because I listen to the music and I listen to a lot of the stuff, and I'm like, So they finally figured out how to do that, or so that kind of thing, because one of the things that he let us do is he let us experiment. He let us like really just kind of like, spend hours with a synth or, messing around with, delays and bouncing tracks and doing all this really weird, cool stuff. Or, one of the things I really did a lot for him was beat detecting. So I was probably one of the first people that really, really used beat detective for a bunch of stuff that you probably shouldn't have.
I was going to say, you wouldn't need beat detective on a click tracked kind of drum machine, would you?
No, but we did it on guitars, and we did it on.
Oh, right.
We did it on all sorts of stuff. I mean, and Yoshiki's one of the first people to use auto tune too, and so we did a lot of that. Before that, he would actually pitch correct it with a harmonizer, and just and do it manually as we're feeding the audio through it. So.
And how long when did auto tune first come out? We're talking like mid 90s maybe?
Yeah, I think it was something like maybe a little later. I bet you it was maybe 97, 98, somewhere around there maybe.
And Yoshiki was using it pretty early on, yeah?
Well, I think the digital version came out first, the actual software. I don't think the hardware box came out until later, maybe 98, 99. And he didn't use the software version. He wanted the hardware version so he could adjust it himself. So we never used Autotune until the hardware box came out.
So what was your favorite Violet UK song, and which one are you most proud of?
Oh, God. I don't. God, there's so many. I would have to look through the names, but I think Red Christmas was pretty cool. The one with Wes Borland was really cool. That one never got released. I don't think I've heard it. Huh?
I said, damn it.
Is that what he named it?
No, that's because we've never heard it.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. There's. I mean, that one's probably one of my favorites actually, because the guitars that Wes did on that were just amazing. And there's another one that he did that just has this really long buildup of drum loops that starts from just a synth pad all the way up until I think we were running 112 tracks of drums. Just like loops and hits and all sorts of and pads and all sorts of stuff, and it just built into this huge thing, and then all of a sudden it would like die off and then just go right into this classic piano and strings, and then it would build up again. This is just some really cool stuff that he did. s.k.i.n was pretty cool. That was really the first one that we ever released that was kind of Violet UK, and that was the one that was on In God's Hands. And then, I mean, I actually have a bunch of them for my reel, but I can't let anybody listen to them.
Of course.
But there's a ton of stuff that he did that's just amazing. I mean, I really wish people could listen to it. I think part of it might also be honest with you. Part of it might just be part of him not diving into it is because it was so complicated and so in depth that, the documentation really probably isn't good enough for him to go back and pull it all back up. A lot of that stuff was in my head and in his head and in Brian, who's a programmer's head. So, so that's, I think that may be part of it. Just the frustration involved with trying to recreate something is probably hard.
Hey, how close were we to seeing a Violet UK album release?
He had enough songs to do it. It was just a matter of us going back and, recording. The hardest part was really finding a vocalist for him. I don't think he ever found the vocalist that he wanted for Violet UK. I think he was using different vocalists. I don't think he ever found one that just was like, oh my God, this is it, but I think a lot of it was done. I know most of the drum tracks were done. A lot of the guitar parts were laid out, and the piano tracks and the strings, everything's laid out. But it was just a matter of going back and re-recording it with real instruments at that point. So it would be like doing string sessions for each of the songs and then doing real guitar sessions. We did do a lot of real guitar sessions. So a lot of those guitars are final guitars. And a lot of the loops and stuff are all done. It would just be a matter of remixing them, because we bounce them down to stems and stuff for recording other stuff. And then, the other thing would be, anytime he did live drums, he would have to go out and probably do that. But we did that for some songs too. So I would say that, like, with him, God, we were probably halfway, but, with any other producer or, artist, that we were probably 80-90% done. And to be honest with you, he could have taken the stuff that he had, mixed it and released it, but I know that would never fly with him. So,
yeah.
So hopefully he finishes it, but maybe he doesn't.
So let's go into Ecstasy Records in a recording studio.
Sure.
So it began as one-on-one, and I guess that most of the people listening would know that one-on-one was a very famous recording studio before Yoshiki bought it.
Yeah.
And we all know the famous story as of why he bought the studio as well, which I'm sure you've heard before as well.
Refresh my memory. Is this because he loved the drums in there, or what?
Well, yeah, he loved the drum sound. He heard that one-on-one had the best drum sound in LA.
Yeah.
Wanted to use it for the next recording. Metallica had it booked out for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So basically, he bought it and kicked them out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a true story.
Yeah.
That's typical of him, though,
Yeah. And it's probably the greatest rock excess story I've heard, I think.
Yeah, it is pretty excessive, isn't it?
Yeah. So how early, you were already at one-on-one when Yoshiki bought it, yeah?
I joined him after he bought it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and keeping in mind, when people are thinking about one-on-one, it is not just one big recording room.
Right.
There are several rooms in one-on-one, right?
Yeah, there's two main studios, A and B, and Yoshiki used mostly B. He would do his drone tracking and his guitar tracking and stuff in A, but a lot of times he rented out the Studio A to other artists. That's where I did the Joan Jett and the Bette Midlers with Ted Templeman and those guys, because he had rented those out and they needed an assistant engineer for that room, so they threw me in there. That was before I started working with him.
Mm-hmm. And at one stage, he actually stopped renting that out, didn't he, to external artists?
Pardon me?
At one stage, he stopped allowing external artists to use.
Yeah, and that's just we were getting more deadlines with the Violet UK, because we pushed deadlines back all the time, and there people were getting mad. We had record people going, "Where is it?" That kind of stuff, and she was like, "It'll be done when it's done."
That really is the story of his life,
Yeah, it is, but it makes for a really stressful environment, to be honest with you. I think I probably lasted longer than anyone that's ever worked for him. I think I went. I think I went a good 10 years. I think maybe a little longer than that. So, it's just. It's really high stress, and the hours are crazy because, 1 minute you'll be working from 7 o'clock at night till 7 a.m., and then the next day you'll start till 4 and go till 4, and then the next day you'll start at noon. It's whenever he woke up. And so, yeah.
So, yeah, okay, so explain an average day working at Ecstasy Studios. So he wakes up, he gives you a call and says, "All right, we're recording now."
Usually what it is it's actually my schedule's set the night before. So at the end of the session, he tells us what time the session's going to start the next day. So imagine if you're trying to make plans with your kids or your wife or anything like that, and you don't know your schedule. So you have no idea what your schedule is until the night before, and it's usually 5 a.m, and he says, "All right, I want to start at 1. And so you're like, okay, I've got to do some edits, tear some stuff, document some things, and then I got to get home, jump in bed, get to sleep, and then I got to get here an hour before him." So, and you do that over and over, 6-7 days. I mean, I think I worked 6 or 7 days a week straight for 10 years.
Wow, man.
There were times when he was traveling or gone, and you get a couple days off or a week here or that kind of thing. Or there was a period I remember where he had a girlfriend where it was, he would take one day off a week, and it was a consistent day, so you could actually make some plans. But I think that was about it. So it wears. At that point, I was married and my kids were getting a little older, so at that point it started wearing in on my personal life. And that was when my wife was just like, look, you need to be here with the kids and the family. And and I was just like, look, this I'm kind of sinking my career because nothing's being released, so I'm like, so like the last credit I had was an ex-Japan thing, or like Darren Gray or something like that. And it's like I've worked 7 years at that, or 6 years on this Japan, on the Violet UK stuff, and nothing's come out. I mean, you're doing great stuff, and the stuff you're doing, and you're learning a ton from them, and there's all those opportunities to work with these different artists. But when you go out to try to get other gigs, if you don't have a reel, it's kind of hard. So so for me, it was like I had an opportunity to my father had a quadruple bypass, and they asked me to come back and help with his company. So I said, you know what, I think I'm going to do that. So I took the opportunity and did that. Now, and I always felt like once my kids were older, I would go back, and I think I would go back to the music industry. They're 17 and 18 right now, so I figured by that time, the Violet UK stuff would be out, and the ex-Japan would start being the cool thing, and maybe I'd start getting some calls from some young kids who want that sound, so.
And you know what, it seems to be kind of happening as well.
Yeah. But to get back to the typical day with him, basically, I'd go in and he would have something that we were doing. A lot of times it was vocal tracking. Let's just say for a vocal tracking day, we'd go in and set up. A guy named Roger Love would come in anytime we were tracking vocals. And so we would do a couple hours of actual tracking vocals with the artist. I'd have printed out all the lyrics, and they would be at a certain font size, and a certain amount of space between them, and we would do Yoshiki would just record take after take after take of this stuff, and then we would have a vocal switcher which had 16 tracks running through it. And basically what we would do is you would switch live. So he would say, take the from track 1, the she from track 6, and the love from track 9, and you'd play it live for him as he listened back. So all the other channels would mute, and he would only hear the ones as you're switching. So it was almost like playing an instrument. But he would get so intricate where he would say, I want the T from track 6, the H from track 7, and the E from track 9 for the word the, or he might go get that first part of the T from this track and go to the other part of the T for this track. And
Serious, it was that.
God, we comped. I'll tell you what, I comped the vocal track. I think it was Shiro, I think is her name. She was her father's like a big famous comedian in Japan, and so he was asked to produce her single for her, and we did 2 songs for her. And I think I spent 6 weeks, 12 hours a day comping a lead vocal for that.
Just the vocal? Just
the lead vocal.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, we had 200 takes of this stuff, and we were, time stretching it and taking, and Yoshiki would listen to every possible combination of this stuff. And then what he would do is he'd be like, and then he'll you'll do it line by line. So you might listen 6 hours of Forever Love, over and over again, just one line of that song over and over again. That was the first song I comped with him, I think, was Forever Love. And you go through it line by line, and there'd be a line, and you would comp it. He would listen to for like 45 minutes, just that line, listening all these different possible combinations. And then at the end he would call out and he'd say, okay, it's this. It'd be like 6, 8, 5, 4, 4, 4, 6, 5. And then you'd basically build it later on in Pro Tools. But before that, we were actually bouncing stuff on a Sony 3348.
Oh God. Yeah, and a song like Forever Love, especially the version on Dahlia, it's the orchestral version, so there's nothing to hide behind. With,
no, not at all.
Bad edits, yeah.
Not at all. So, and he would listen to every one of them, so you had to do it perfectly. And then the other thing that made it really hard, the whole part that makes it really hard, is that I didn't speak a word of Japanese. So I'm like running a vocal switcher, and I have no idea what the words are. I just see them typed out in English on the piece of paper, and I'm like listening to them the first time, going, okay, no, and I'm switching where he's telling me to switch. But it just made it even, and it's nerve wracking because if you mess up, he's going to yell at you, or he has to start over because it distracts him, that kind of thing. So.
Oh, God.
Later on, as technology came around and Pro Tools got better and stuff, we would actually just loop it in Pro Tools and just auto punch in Pro Tools. So it made it a lot easier, but that was halfway into the Violet UK project before we started doing that. So,
Yeah.
Probably one of the most stressful things I've ever done.
Yeah, man. Doing vocal comps in a language you don't even know, you don't know the phrasing, that would be next to impossible.
The only way he got away with it is because he'd start easy. He'd be like, listen to track 1 all the way through, listen to track 2, and then he would go, okay, this word from this track, and then it would start building more complex and complex. So he had a chance to actually learn the line before, he started getting into really intricate switches. And the guy, Tal Miller, he's the one who taught me how to do it, and he was doing it before me. So, he was doing the same thing. So, there was a couple of us that did that.
Did Yoshiki always have his drums mic'd up and ready to go and the piano mic'd up ready to go?
No, they were always out there, but they weren't always mic'd up.
Okay.
It didn't take us long to mic up a piano. That's pretty easy. And the drums were usually set up. And we would mic it up, but drum tracking with Yoshiki that's a day of setting up and just getting everything fine tuned and stuff.
On a personal note, and one of my friends actually, he wants to know which kit Yoshiki used for recording, if you could remember.
It was a titanium kit.
It was the titanium kit.
Yeah, it was a titanium. It's a titanium kit that we used for tracking. Occasionally, for Violet UK, it was a little different. We ran in some snares and stuff from Drum Doctor to sample, that kind of stuff. But, he always played that titanium kit,
Nice.
I've banged on those things. My son banged on those things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Because he was telling me that kit at one stage was the most expensive kit in the world, basically.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, he had the double kicks and I bet you, oh, God, I don't know how many pieces that was, but it was huge. But then he also had, 3 different size kicks and, extra toms and all sorts of stuff. That putting that kit together was a chore, man.
Yeah. And did he store all that stuff on site, or because he obviously had a lot of kits and a lot of pianos?
Well, the main kit they recorded with and like a couple others that he kept on site. He actually kept it underneath the there's an upstairs part of the lounge. They used to keep it under that. And then, guitars and stuff, he started collecting guitars during Violet UK. So he started having a lot of guitars then. And then, as far as pianos go, we had the one Steinway and he had one in his office for practicing, but, and then we also had the Yamaha out there as well. So there was 3 pianos in the building. But we also had samples, of his pianos and stuff that we did.
For MIDI. So did he usually use the synth or, the MIDI, or did he actually use the baby grands for recording?
we sampled the Baby Grands and made 7-layered samples, at different velocities, triggering different samples. And so he would go through and he played every one of those notes on that Steinway out there, and we recorded it, and then basically we edited and built an entire keyboard out of it. So this is before anybody had these 3 gigabyte, 4 gigabyte samples of pianos. We're doing this 5 years before any of those guys, and we had a 4 gigabyte sample of Yoshiki. We had I remember we had 6 or 7 samplers to play the thing out of, or something like that. It was something ridiculous.
That's cool. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, so that's what he would do all his programming in. So he would write the songs using that. And he would go through and adjust velocities and all sorts of stuff. Stuff for TV and stuff, he would actually use that piano maybe. But most of it, we went out and he actually played it, He would rehearse for hours and hours and hours before any type of, when we were actually doing final recording. So, you go out there and do pianos, and he would just do a couple takes. He'd come in and it was pretty much done. He was that good.
Wow. And then we wonder why he's got wrist problems with all that practice.
Yeah, part of it's that, and just he just never stops. He's been wearing those wristbands for tendonitis for years, he wasn't wearing them when I first met him, but he was wearing them every day when we were working on Violet, and he had the neck brace as well.
Yeah, the neck brace people think is a relatively new thing, but I've seen footage of him recording drums with a neck brace for Jealousy, back in '91.
Yeah, he was told that he shouldn't be playing drums anymore. At least that's what he told me, is that that there's always a chance of him really messing himself up if he plays drums. He just continued to do it. He wore the neck brace. I think he wore it a lot longer after the I think there was a show at Tokyo Dome or somewhere where the thing that goes up broke and he slid off of it or something like that.
Oh shit!
Yeah, his security guy caught him. From what I understand. Yeah, but that's. That's what it is. What it is. He'll never stop. That guy's gonna do what he's gonna do. So I just hope nothing bad happens to the guy.
He won't stop to get surgery, man. So it's a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know. It's really funny because he's in some ways he'll disregard stuff because he feels like he owes it to his fans. To be there for him and stuff. He feels really guilty if he doesn't get stuff out the door, and I think that's part of why he puts so much pressure on everybody there. It's not just because he wants to get it done, but he feels like he has to, and people are waiting, and it's that kind of thing. So I think part of that pressure is the fans, on him, and and him just wanting to to do the best he can.
Back to the studios. So at one stage, Ecstasy Records had 2 studios. There was the one-on-one studio, which was Ecstasy North, and there was another studio that was originally called Brooklyn Recording,
right?
Which he bought out, and that became Ecstasy South,
right?
So what was the deal there? Did he use both? Did you guys go back and forth between the studios, or?
No, occasionally we would go over there and do some stuff because they had a Neve console over there, so we'd do some things there. But mostly, Brooklyn was in the building that he bought where he put the record company. Okay. So he bought it along with the record company, and so the guy Bill Dooley, who ran Brooklyn, became the manager of both facilities. And then Yoshiki built his record company in that same building. So, Brooklyn was right there. And then he used Brooklyn a lot for the recordings of the artists at that record label.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Violet UK stuff wasn't really recorded there much at all.
Oh, no, almost nothing. I don't think we did anything there, to be honest with, as far as Violet UK goes. I don't think. No, there wasn't anything we did there as far as Violet UK. We did do some stuff for some of the Japanese artists he produced and stuff, but that was it.
Okay, cool. Duran Gray, they recorded their first 5 major label singles with Yoshiki, and you were involved in all 5 of those songs, I believe.
Yep.
Those songs ended up on the album Gauze, which was their first. Well, it took off for them. It really did. Was Yoshiki originally supposed to produce the whole album? Was it always just going to be the singles?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know the details of that. Just because, a lot of that, was done on the Japanese side. A lot of that was done in Japan. They showed up to record, and we recorded, and these were the songs that we did. It wasn't like I didn't know. I don't think we were ever planning on doing a full album in there. I do know the 5 songs was a lot for Yoshiki to do. That's more, I think, that he did than for any other artist he produced. I'm pretty surprised they did that many for him. But, those guys were nice guys, and it was fun doing that project.
Yeah, is there anything you can remember from those recordings or that project?
No, I remember doing a lot of bass tracking on that album, and I remember doing a lot of guitar tracking. It's so far back. I'd actually have to, a lot of the stuff that triggers memories for me is actually listening to the music. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song. Yeah. And then I can tell you exactly what we did. But, it gets to a point where, you've worked on so much stuff that a lot of times you forget what you've even worked on. But those guys were nice. I remember those guys being really nice guys, and I remember liking the tracks. And I remember Yoshiki telling me afterwards that, it did really well, and they sold a bunch of copies. And I was like, great, my name's on it. I was like, that's about all I remember. I think we did some stuff with TK as well at one point.
I'll tell you what, that would have been interesting. So you're in the studio with both Tetsuya and Yoshiki, who are both known as very, how can I put it, very exact in their recordings.
Yeah, I think, but TK, kind of gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. We went into TK's studio, and it was just Yoshiki and I basically there, and then a couple Japanese guys. But it was he and I doing, laying down tracks. I think it was loops and pianos and stuff and other stuff. And then TK took that track and went from there with it. But I think that was an interesting experience, because that was that was me and Yoshiki without a lot of the entourage and the whole other things. We'd sit there and eat dinner together, and it was kind of an interesting experience with him. I actually got to know him pretty well during that process, and it was, but that TK studio was amazing in Tokyo, man. That place. Yeah, he had some Mercedes upstairs in it that was like, I think he bought, that was like I think it's like a one of a kind Mercedes or something. I don't know the story behind it, but Yoshiki was telling me, it's like, he's like, this thing is ridiculously expensive because there's only a few of them made or something like that. And,
And this was for the when Yoshiki briefly joined Globe, right?
Yep, that was exactly what it was for. We flew over there just specifically to work on that stuff, and then came back.
Well, that would have been really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm surprised I haven't gotten very many calls from Japan or Asia for any work, because there's a lot of stuff I've actually got my name all over that, that actually turned out to be pretty decent work.
Was there anything else? What other artists did you work on? I mean, Yoshiki produced a song for the Korean band Trax. Were you involved in that?
Yeah, I think I worked on that a bit. I don't know if I got credits for that, but I think I worked on it. I remember doing that. We did Shizuka. I think we did a song for her. We did. a couple Japanese TV shows or soap operas. I can't remember what. I remember there's some Japanese TV shows we did theme songs for. And then there were, I don't know about, tracks. I remember tracks actually now I think about it. Yeah. And then, I think that's it. I think we did a lot of stuff for his label here, like Asian Deshore and like oh God, what's her name? She went on to sing with Moby after that. I can't remember her name. Laura Dawn. Laura Dawn, and did this stuff with her, and then did there were a couple other. There's a couple other things we did. I think I did some stuff with Jimmy Paxton and Jimmy. Got Subbionic, I think was the name of the album. But I did some work with. That wasn't with Yoshiki, but that was me helping them out. And then there was some stuff I did. I worked a little bit on the Perfect Circle's first album.
Wow.
Those guys were in Studio A, and they actually signed their record deal in the lounge of Yoshiki Studio.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was actually a really good album. I was trying to. Yoshiki was gone. If he had been there, I was going to walk in there and tell him, I was like, hey, you better sign these guys before somebody else does. But yeah, I think he was in Japan at the time or something like that. But man, that album was a great album. Some Van Halen was in there too, I think. Kiss came in there for a little bit.
That's right. Kiss recorded their reunion album, Psycho Circus, at One on One, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and that was. Yeah, I did a little bit of comping stuff on that, like some just help out stuff. But that's just because we were in next door. But that, I didn't get any credits. There's no credits for that kind of stuff. But Yoshiki's pretty good friends with Gene, so I think that's why they did it.
Do you ever get a little starstruck when these artists are coming in?
I'll tell you what, and I didn't really get starstruck, but I'll tell you who I got starstruck by. When we were at Record One, doing the Dahlia album, the Grateful Dead were in the other room. Mickey Hart walked by me, and I kind of freaked out. Just I was a big fan of the Grateful Dead at the thing. I was like, whoa, my God. And I think that's the most freaked out I got. And then I think I also was at Record one time, and I went over to the McDonald's with my wife, and we walked in, and there's Eric Clapton sitting there, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit. But
oh, wow.
Yeah, but I think I think I was young enough and naive enough that it didn't really make, and especially with Asian bands, when you're an American, you don't really realize how big they are until you go there. So a lot of the starstruck aspect of it never really occurred to me.
Here's a question I like to ask all the people that I talk to. When you started working with X, did you have any idea how big they were?
No, I did not. I remember I was told that they were the Beatles of Japan, is what they were. But I was first told when I was hired as a runner there, and that, and I was like, okay. But it didn't really make sense until I went there for the first time and saw, when I started seeing people standing in the streets in wedding dresses screaming before the show, I knew that something was wrong, And then, I went out drinking with him one night, and I realized that they're closing down streets for him. That I was like, okay, this guy is like way up there,
So you actually out there on the whole Dahlia tour, or was it just the final?
The final, and the ones at the Tokyo Dome where we recorded them. Yeah,
I mean, that show or those shows are my favourite live shows of X personally. I think they were phenomenal, and the production and just the whole feel of it is just phenomenal.
Yeah, Mike. I'll tell you what, Mike Ging, who engineered that, did an amazing job. He and I was his assistant engineer on that, and he's an amazing engineer. That guy is probably one of the best engineers I've ever worked with. Him and Joe Ciccarelli are probably the two, and Steve Churchyard, as well.
So talking about these live shows, though, I presume that you were at the last live as well?
No, I was not, and that those were actually recorded. I think the last lives were recorded in Japan by the Japanese, and then the tape sent to us.
Okay.
And we did it, and we actually had some. I think there were some problems with those tapes, if I remember correctly, with as far as time code goes. I think there were some synchronization issues, and
Okay.
I think that was one of the reasons. I think. No, I don't remember the time sequence, but I know one of the reasons why we went there to record on that Dahlia tour was because there were some problems previously. So I don't remember the sequence of things. So
Cool, man. Oh, I envy you so much for being at that show, at that Dahlia Tour Final show.
I was in a truck. So I wasn't really there, but yeah, I was there kind of.
Best quote of the interview, I reckon. Man, so we'll get back to the studios. He closed up One-on-One. Were you there when he closed up One-on-One?
No, I was not. I had left, and I had heard that he had bought a new place and was moving. It was building a new studio. So no, I was not there when he left One-on-One.
Cool. Was there any talk of the X Japan reunion when you were still working with him?
No.
No.
No. No, there wasn't. I think we were doing via UK, and then we had, what kind of made me kind of get out of it was because was that we were going to take on a couple more projects that weren't Violet UK, that I was just kind of like, oh God, where's this going to go? I was like, I need to find a time that's good, So I told him, I told him I was going to be leaving, and I left him, a letter on his desk saying, hey, this is what's up, so he got real mad at me, for a day or two. And then after that, he called me up and, we sat down and, I spent about maybe a month and a half, 2 months going over with, another Mike Ging, who he brought in to kind of finish that project off, to go through and just, make sure all the song documentation of all the songs and the hard drives and everything was all good for that stuff. And we recalled each song on the console, played it for him. He checked to make sure it was okay, and then we moved on to the next song. And so I tried to leave, without, just leaving him hanging, I guess is what it was. I felt obligated because I was so involved in that project and so much of it was in my head.
No.
But I think a lot. I think there's probably a good percentage of that just I never wrote down and documented just because it was just too much stuff.
Hey, one last thing. Just before the reunion, there was a project, a Japanese super band that Yoshiki created called s.k.i.n.
Yes.
Now, we know that they demoed some songs. Was that anything to do with you?
No, but it wouldn't surprise. It doesn't. He could have used some of those Violet UK songs for that. I don't know I'm not familiar with what songs they were. I could tell you if they were, if I heard them. I'd be like, oh yeah, it's a Violet UK song, or whatnot. And I'm pretty sure that he might have. I think there was some stuff like Red Christmas and some other songs that he put out. Those were all Violet UK songs. I think he also wrote a song. I think it's one of his best songs off on 9/11 about the guys jumping off the buildings.
Oh wow.
Which was really emotional. He was watching it in the studios as it was happening. And I think it really impacted me. He wrote a great ballad for that. That's the song that Nicole Schlesinger sings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But, he's definitely, I wouldn't say recycled some material, but in the new X Japan music, you can hear parts of Violet UK songs in the new X Japan songs, some of the progressions, or, have you heard much of the new X Japan music?
I have not heard it at all, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I think the last text message I got from Yoshiki was telling me that he texted me to watch the Golden Globes because he had done the music for it. I was like,
right.
yeah.
Which was very cool, and look, it's good.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind listening to it. I just, to be honest with you, I haven't listened to X in a long time, man. I listen to now. I listen to a lot of rap.
And there's not so much rap in Violet UK, right?
No, but it's just because my kids, that's what they listen to. So I'm listening to what they listen to. But what's funny is just like, I have a tendency, because of working for him, that whenever I listen to this music, that it just, I dissect it. I hear it. I start hearing every mistake that's there. So a lot of times it's not very enjoyable to listen to when you're constantly analyzing it. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, there was also a rumor going around that Dahlia was originally going to be 2 albums, one for international release and one for the Japanese market. Is that just rumor, or have you heard anything about that?
I didn't know anything about it. I know that there were a lot of songs on that album. But no, I didn't know.
Well, man, look. We'll leave it there, I reckon. Look, I've got to thank you so much again for doing this, mate. It's been fantastic. And look, the reason I do it is because there is so much known about the band, but there's so much, from the English-speaking side of the story that isn't documented, and getting people like yourself is just awesome.
Yeah, anytime, man. I'm always around. You got my contact info, so just hit me up.
I might hit you up again.
Well, if you have any artists that want to use me and they're trying to do that, just tell them to contact me, Just doesn't matter.
We'll do it. We'll do.
Well, that was the incredible interview with Dokk Knight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And look, like Doc said, I'd love to get him back on the show in a few months' time and maybe get you guys, as the listeners, to ask all the questions next time. I think that'd be awesome if Doc is up for it. So like Doc said, if there are any artists out there that would like to use him as an engineer or a producer, Doc is getting back into it. He's had 10 years experience with Yoshiki, man. What more experience do you need? So if you'd like to get into contact with him, look, send me an email at xjapanpodcast, which is all one word, at gmail.com, or hit me up on the Facebook page and I'll pass on all the details and all the information onto Doc, and he will get back in touch with you. Hey, one thing I forgot to explain before the interview started was the term comping, or a comp. In the recording world, comping is when you record several takes of a certain track, then use the best parts of all of those recordings to make one part. For example, you might record a vocal of a song maybe 50 times, and then you use the best parts of all of those 50 times and make the one vocal recording. So that gives you an idea of how much of a perfectionist that Yoshiki is in the studio. So as always, I look forward to you guys giving me some feedback, both positive and negative. Doesn't matter. Just send that feedback coming. Give us your opinions. This is what it's all about. Anyway, love you guys to bits. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next month.